Welcome to the Grawlix Podcast. This is Randy.
And I am Jesse.
In the future, tennis shoes will be manufactured without tongues, so they can't tell anyone our secrets.
In the future, public schools will offer nunchucks and cross-stitch as after-school clubs.
All right, let's do it. What was this? Which con was this?
Okay, this was Planet Comicon, and this happens in Kansas City. So this, for us, we went down in a car full of 4 people, myself and 3 others, and we just went on Sunday. And originally, we thought we would maybe miss some of the con traffic because, like traditionally, Sunday is kind of a slow con day. Mm-hmm. But as the guest list started coming out, we found out that Shatner was going to be there, but only on Sunday. So there went our plan for it to be like an easy day to hit everything. It was still pretty good, but I would say that the fact that Shatner was only there that day probably increased the general con population and made it more like what a typical Saturday would be. This year they broke records for their attendance, which was awesome. Yeah. Just to kind of give an overall idea, the media guests this year included a huge reunion of most of the cast of Star Trek: The Next Generation, as well as William Shatner was there on the Sunday. So you had LeVar Burton, you had Brent Steiner, you had Worf, you had Will Wheaton, who, he's popular for more than just Star Trek. But then you also had, Deanna Troi and I can't even remember her name, but Wesley Crusher's mom was Dr. Crusher. Oh, Beverly Crusher. So you had just about, and Riker was there. Pretty much the whole command crew, aside from Patrick Stewart, of course. Uh-huh. He was the only one that wasn't really there as far as main Star Trek personalities that you think of. And so that was like a huge draw. They also, the original guests that they had announced were Margot Kidder, who played Lois Lane in the Christopher Reeves Superman movies, mm-hmm. and Lee Majors, who was the $6 billion man. And I remembered him as the Fall Guy. I had the Fall Guy truck growing up, and so I was like, $6 billion man, huh? But they also had a couple of, they had other people like Rastenberger, who was in Cheers and also does voiceovers in like Toy Story and stuff. They also had Sylvester McCoy, which was the huge draw for me. Oh, he was priority number 1 for sure. They had the Blue Power Ranger from the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers Day, Billy Yost. I think it's Billy Yost or David Yost. I'm going to get that mixed up. Anyways, the Blue Power Ranger was there. I'm gonna forget a bunch of the media guests, which is unfortunate, but there were quite a few.
That's huge. That is a huge guest list. I didn't even know about a quarter of them.
Yeah, and I'm missing a whole bunch. There were some from shows that I haven't watched. Jewel Slate, who came to Omaha a couple of years back for Contagion. She's in Firefly, played Kaylee. She was there. Oh. I forgot her because I've already seen her. And then when we were in line, and the line was incredible, we got our pre-ordered tickets, and so that we didn't have to go through, the day of line, and that put us pretty close to the front of the line. As we're standing there, I'm next to one of the, the Star Trek guys, and he pointed out the fact that John Delancey was also going to be there, and he played Q. But he was not on the original guest list that I was aware of. And so we got there, and he was there, and he's like super, like notoriously super fun at cons. He kind of, tools around the whole con and doesn't just hang out at his table. And I even kind of watched that happen.
Not to sidetrack you, is that when you got yelled at?
Yes, yes, I got yelled at because I took a picture of John Delancey and I didn't realize that you couldn't take pictures of any of the Star Trek guys. You could take a picture of like Will Wheaton, or at least he was cool with it, but then all of the Star Trek folks were they had their own, almost like their own little wing of booths.
Uh-huh.
And so the way that it works is the con makes money off of, autographs and photo ops. And so for all the Star Trek guys, if you wanted a photo, you had to go through their professional photographer, which was through the con. So that the con could make money off of the autographs and they could make money off of photo ops. And so I took a picture of Delancey because he's like not staying at his booth, and I'm like, man, that's awesome. He's up and around and stuff. Like he walked up to his line because the line is back away from the tables, and they do kind of that roped line thing where you it creates kind of an S where you're in between these poles with the tape and whatnot.
Yeah, like a bank line or whatever.
Yes, yeah, or like when you hit Burger King at lunchtime and you gotta wait. That's what I'm more used to.
Yeah.
I'm not in a big line of people that have money, so. Yeah, so I'm standing off to the side and I'm trying to take pictures of. I got like 3 pictures before they caught me. I was going to try to get a picture of LeVar Burton, and then I noticed that John Delancey was being, super interesting. So yeah.
Yeah, sorry to sidetrack you, but I thought that was humorous when you sent me the message. And
yes, yeah.
You got his picture, but they yelled at you.
yeah. Which I would have got more pictures if I hadn't done that, but that's all right. One of the coolest pictures that I got was I was in Lee Major's line, and I get up to the front of the line, and they have kind of a gal at the front or a guy at the front that kind of tells you when you can go up to the table proper. And she's like, "Whoa, is Will Wheaton getting chewed out by his TV mom?" And so I look over there, and it's the gal that plays Beverly Crusher, and she's talking to Will, and he's like looking like super freaked out and stuff, and she looks super stern, and that was probably my favorite photo, and it's all because the gal that was watching the Lee Majors line pointed it out to me, or I would have totally missed that moment.
That's great. I wonder what was going on.
I have no idea what was going on, but he was just like, "Oh no!" He had this. He's super animated. He talks with his hands and stuff a lot, and so it was interesting. And so I look over there. He's got his mouth like wide open and stuff, and she looks like super serious, like something happened. And
Wesley got in trouble by his mom.
That was the caption, but I'm sure that's not what was happening.
No, yeah.
It was pretty funny. I thought, oh no, he's getting in trouble, and that was kind of her joke. Actually, it was the gal that manned the line at Lee Majors. Yeah, I started the day we got there about an hour early, so that we wouldn't be way in the back of the line. And we were still, I'd say the first eighth of the line, I suppose, back. And we got in there, and immediately my first priority was to go ahead and get into Sylvester McCoy's line, because he was the only Doctor Who representative at the con, and the first Doctor Who representative at that con in its whole run. Probably the first one to come to the Midwest, aside from Chicago TARDIS, which happens around Thanksgiving. I guess this year was pretty big, but this is the first time that he'd been to Kansas City, and I watched a little bit of his panel because they've posted it online through Traveling the Vortex, which is a podcast for Doctor Who.
Oh,
and it's a really fun panel. So if you get a chance, maybe take a look at that. I'm
definitely going to have to check that out. Shortly after, I want to say the next day or so, I was kind of scouring YouTube for clips of Planet Con, but I couldn't find too much at that point. But takes time to upload those, I'm sure.
Sure, yeah. So I got into his line right away, and I found out pretty quickly that the way I planned my time in the media lines was I had prioritized it, but I had not thought about what would be the most efficient, because I got into McCoy's line because that was the most important one to me right off the bat, and met him, and he was one of the few people that was allowing you to take pictures at the booth. So so I was super geeking out about that. I had to send that to you before.
That is a great picture.
I said that morning. I was at the con, and I'm sending that out, and I'm like, Randy's got to see this.
And I had totally spaced the con out. You had told me about it a while ago, and at that time, I was interested because you mentioned McCoy and Scott Snyder, so I was looking to see what the schedule would be like, but they didn't have it up at that time. And then I just spaced it off until you sent me a picture of you with McCoy. I was like, oh my God. But, yeah, that's a great picture. It's a good picture.
Yeah, I'm like, how am I out of focus? I feel like I'm out of focus, and maybe I'm not, but I just feel like I'm vibrating too much or something. I'm doing a flash thing where I'm vibrating out of my own skin.
So what did you talk to him about?
Well, and you don't get a whole lot of time with them because they kind of cycle through the people in the line so that nobody stands there waiting for too long. But when I got up to him, he's kind of, this is right away in the morning, so they're already kind of talking about how, like when he wants to head back to the UK and when he can get a flight. So he's doing a little bit of that banter with the people at his table when I get up to him. And I had brought a Big Finish CD booklet for him to sign. Each table had photos that you could have signed, and that would have been cool, and I probably should have went that route. But one of the people that rode up with me wanted to get an autograph too, so I had him sign my CD booklet and then also a autograph for somebody else. And so I got to talk to him about Big Finish a little bit, and I'm a little bit awkward, just in general, but especially with like people I don't know, and then add the fact that they're celebrity on top of that, and it goes the way of they're going to kind of control the conversation, and if they're awkward in any way, then that's going to be a pretty short conversation. But the fact that I brought that CD booklet kind of helped guide it a little bit, and he asked me like, what do you like Big Finish? And I was like, yes. I think I was super excited about this one because the booklet I had him sign was the what would have been the next season. It would have been the start of the next season. It's one of those lost stories, so it was the script that was penned to follow up Survival, which was the last episode that he did before they canceled the series until the 8th Doctor movie came out in like the 90s. So I told him I was super excited about that one, and he said, I'm surprised that Big Finish hasn't caught on more because you people drive everywhere, which was pretty funny. So that was pretty much the extent of that conversation. And then I took the picture, and it was on you go. But it was still pretty cool to meet him, and he was very friendly and personable. I should have had more to talk about. I kind of brought artifacts for these people to sign that I thought would inspire conversation, and they did for the most part.
That's good thinking. That's a good way to go about it, because I don't know what I would say to any of them if I come up to them.
Right, and it's like I know better. They're just people, and if you just treat them like people, which they are, then you'll have more to talk about. One of my friends, he has a rule. Dave Bell has a rule, and that is to have it like a question ready for him, just one. And so I didn't really have a question ready for him. So I was thinking out my next media guest interaction in advance, which I got right into Will Wheaton's line. And that's where I realized that I had not planned efficiently, because if I had gone directly to Will Wheaton's line, I could have shaved like a half hour, because his line was like super long. I gotta imagine his was the second longest line that morning, aside from Shatner. We had someone in the car that was getting Shatner's autograph, and so he got into line right away. I was able to get both Will Wheaton and Sylvester McCoy before he was done with the Shatner line. That's how long the Shatner line was, which you kind of expect. So I get into Will Wheaton's line immediately afterwards and realize, oh man, McCoy's line is not nearly long enough. If I had gone right to Will Wheaton's line, I seriously could have shaved about a half hour off my morning and seen a few more things, but you live and learn on that situation. And for Will Wheaton, I brought a audiobook that he did, which is called Ready Player One, and it's actually written by Ernie Klein, who is a slam poet, and then he started writing like screenplays. He did the screenplay for Fanboys, which was a movie about fans of Star Wars trying to sneak in an early viewing of Phantom Menace before we realized what it really was.
Melanie joined us, by the way, just so you know.
Excellent.
Yeah. Melanie's here.
Yay.
Okay.
No!
Okay, so you talked to McCoy. Oh, did you hop in? Did you hop in Will Wheaton's line next, or?
Yes, yeah. Okay, so okay. I went into Will Wheaton's line, and I'm trying to think of what my question is, because the one rule: have one question for him when you get up there, and so I brought this audiobook that he did for Ernest Klein, who did all these kinds of things, and I get up there, and my question for Will Wheaton was, do you know Ernie? So I had this question, I'm ready to go. I had this really great conversation with the gal that was, like taking money and stuff. And I at that point, I should have ditched it. I should have just grabbed one of the photos, which are free with an autograph anyways, and talked about games, because I could have talked about games the whole time. But instead, I was like, I really want him to sign this audiobook that was done by somebody, that was actually written by somebody else. And then I'm going to ask him about them. So you can imagine how awkward things went from there. And I did this with the guy, like as I'm standing in line, I'm talking to the guy that they have a sign that shows where the end of the line is. So I'm talking with him for a little while, and he's like, oh yeah, Wheaton actually will talk to you. So, it's the best money you can spend on an autograph. And so I get up there and totally blow it by asking about somebody else.
Oh, that's great.
Did you know him?
But yeah, he knew him. Yeah, no, he told me a story that I actually already knew. And so inside my brain, I'm already chewing myself out. I'm like, you already knew this. Why did you ask him that question? Because one of the reasons that Ernie Klein blew up was that Will Wheaton posted one of his slam poems about how back when we were kids that we didn't have email, kind of thing. Mm-hmm. So I actually knew that, but I wasn't thinking in that moment. So I'm like, do you know Ernie? So everybody else got like 15 minutes with him and super animated Will Wheaton, and then I get there and I get like 5 minutes because I'm super awkward. But it makes for a great story, I guess.
Yeah, it does. And I think I would handle it much, much worse than that anyway.
Can I call you out for a second?
What?
When he was telling me about you having gone there and met people, he's like, "Who's Will Wheaton?" And I was like, "No."
Oh no!
I did not. You can call me out. I don't care. I did not. I mean, obviously, when she told me who he was, I knew who he was, but I don't know. I don't know of his other work or anything like that. So
yeah.
Well, and yeah, his line was huge. Like I said, he was second only, at least right away in the morning, he was second only to William Shatner himself. because he's so heavily entrenched in the culture now. He does a show on board games. He's on The Big Bang Theory. He's still, Crusher. he's still Wesley Crusher. So
still gets chewed out by his mom.
Yeah, still gets chewed out by his TV mom.
Later, I'll play the beginning. We haven't been recording too long. I'll play the beginning for you. I think you'll be amused by it. Okay. So what happened? After him? What was up on the agenda?
Well, Lee Major's line was right next door, and his line was super short, which kind of makes me sad because he is the $6 billion man.
Yeah.
So I just jumped right into that line, and that line took no time. And like I said, that's when, she was like, hey, he's getting chewed out by his TV mom. And so I got a pretty cool moment just out of being in that line alone. And so I get to meet him and shake his hand, and he's probably about as, I don't want to say he's as awkward as I am, but he was very reserved. And he just basically said hi and shook my hand and signed the photo. Sure. And that was about it. But he was a nice guy, but he wasn't real talkative or anything. Mm-hmm. So that was, I really don't have a story there. It was, more of the story was standing in that line than actually meeting the man. But he was very nice, very pleasant guy. Then I got to actually go experience the con. I felt like the morning was the work of the con, like standing in these lines. Not to say I didn't stand in lines, ever again, but like those lines took a lot longer than any other line. Mm-hmm. So I started wandering, I got to wander around and meet some artists and some writers, and I learned some interesting con etiquette, I think, and maybe it's well-known con etiquette or not well-known con etiquette. I met up with some of my friends, and they had already been chatting with people like Freddie Williams, who wrote he's done lots of things, but he also wrote the DC's Guide to Digital, digital comics. And so, going around to those guys, almost all of them signed things for free. They just, you'd bring them a book and they would sign it. And so the thing that I found interesting was that when I got in line for, was it John Williams, who wrote he wrote the first miniseries. We talked about He-Man and the Masters of the Universe for DC last time. He wrote the first arc for that miniseries. And so I got in his line, and it's a pretty long line. And I'm wondering, what's going on here? Well, part of the reason it was such a long line is you had people showing up with stacks of books, like all their monthlies. Like I would say there were guys that had 6 to 7 comics for him to sign. And I just had one. And I thought, wow, this is weird. I would think that you would just want to bring one.
Yeah.
And not
if I was
log down a line.
Yeah, if I was the guy signing it, I'd only want people to bring one.
Yeah.
Yeah. And I think I got a little bit more time with him because of that. Like when people would just slap a stack down in front of him, he'd just start signing. And then I got up there with just one there, and he's like, do you want me to personalize it? And he said hello and that kind of thing. Whereas these other guys, I feel like he just kind of just took their stack and started signing them. So I think it's probably better con etiquette to show up with just one book as opposed to a whole stack of them.
Yeah, it seems a lot more respectful, and it sounds like you kind of got a better experience out of it than the guys that are just like, here, sign this, workhorse.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I didn't know if maybe these are guys that were at like vendor booths that had just a bunch that they could now bring home and sell for a little bit more. And I don't want to call anybody out on that, but that's what it kind of felt like. It was like, wow, you're just going to have them. They'd come with a stack of JLAs, and it's like, bam, go ahead and sign them. Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, I was thinking something like that, or even if it was just for them personally, still, it's, I want these to be worth more. So you do all this for me.
Yeah,
and I don't like that.
They sign it and then it shows up on eBay.
Right. Yeah. I don't care for that.
Well, and he wasn't even selling anything. He was just at a plain table just signing books. Whereas some of the artists, they could sell their work and you could do a little bit more in terms of like income. But for him and a couple of those guys, they were just kind of bang, bang, bang in a row. That's all it was just kind of like it was like a buffet of getting your books signed. And I was kind of surprised by that, I guess. Let's see. Then I went and I got in Scott Snyder's line, and boy, his line was long too. And it probably went as slow as Will Wheaton's line, not because he had time to talk to everybody, but because again, you had a little bit of that where people were just giving him a stack. Plus, it was the last signing he was going to do before he had to leave the con. And so. The thing that was cool about Scott, though, was that he would give you a moment. Like the first thing he does is he says hello and shakes your hand and looks at you. Whereas some of them, they look at the thing you hand them. Right. And so I was pretty impressed with how personable he was. And my friends that came, they went to him right away in the morning, and so they got a little bit more time to kind of talk his ear off. So that was pretty cool.
Oh, man. Yeah. Yeah, I bet.
Two more. Well, I guess there's probably three more big things that happened. Like Tony Moore was there, who he is the artist that helped Kirkman start The Walking Dead. So out of all of the artists that I met, he was the only one I had to pay for a signing on, which I kind of understand. Especially when it comes to The Walking Dead and how things went down there. And he was very pleasant, but I did have to pay for him to sign my trade for the first volume. But he was pretty pleasant, and I got to tell him that I really like the way he does Rick, especially in that first book, because Rick's he's still very innocent, and just the way that he draws, he makes the zombies and the people look very different, especially in that first volume, where Rick's just the square jawed. He really, I feel like he nails that innocence that Rick has in that first volume, and I haven't really seen where it goes beyond volume 1 as far as art direction goes, but I was really impressed with that first volume for sure. So that was cool. Then probably I had two other experiences, and one of them ties into my recent read, so I'll just kind of save that one. The last person that I really interacted with was Bill Amend, who is the artist and author for Foxtrot for who knows how long, for the last several decades. So huge inspiration to me. And again, another situation where you'd expect to go ahead and pay for his signature, and not only did he sign my book, he draws, a little character drawing of Jason Fox in the front of it saying, "Hi, Jesse." And then he also has prints for sale. So I was like, I've got to buy a print, because this is ridiculous that I'm going to pay $40 for a Lee Majors autograph, and Bill Amend's not charging anything.
Yeah.
And he was very personable. Granted, I had watched a documentary that he was in the night before, so I was kind of like prepared for that. I was like, "Hey, I just watched this documentary," and he was like, "How was it?" I haven't got to see it, and I was like, "Oh, that's not fair." He's like, "I don't like seeing myself on camera." I was like, "I like you. You're like me." So. Yeah, it was a really fun experience. The rest of the day, we just kind of tooled around. Well, a lot of like, "Hey, look at that costume," and "Whoa, look at that," and different booths, a lot of different merch vendors, and it was some pretty cool stuff to see. I would definitely recommend Planet Comicon. I would have gone anyways. We were planning on going. We were even thinking about having a table this year, and then finances didn't work out. And next year we're definitely going. I don't know if we'll have a table, but we're definitely going.
One thing I wanted to ask you about, some of the videos we did find on YouTube were, it was pretty much just cosplayers and stuff like that. What are some of your favorite costumes?
Well, you've got all the kind of standard fare where you've got people that dress up like Rose Tyler from Doctor Who. You've got folks that dress up like the Doctor. You've got a lot of people dressing up like Star Trek characters because of all the Star Trek that was in-house that day. There was the Dalek that was going around, and I believe that was just a costume. I don't know if that was somebody that they wanted there.
It was a red Dalek, right?
Yes,
yeah,
and I think that was
seen that thing. And yeah.
I don't know if he was a guest or if he was just a cosplayer, and it sounded like he was just a cosplayer. And that was a very impressive Dalek, to say the least.
A lot of people
nigh perfect.
A lot of people must have liked it because every video we come across had the red Dalek on it, and then I also saw pictures of it online. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
Oh, yeah. There was this moment where this guy that was cosplaying as Captain Kirk was facing off against him. Like, he got into that pre-Kirk fight mode where he's got both hands kind of circling, and somebody else was doing like the fight song that always happens when Captain Kirk gets into a fight. It was pretty funny moment. I wish I would have got a picture of that. But that happened just after my friend Axton got a picture taken with the Dalek. So that was probably the most impressive one because you had to practically build a robot. For your costume. There was a group that came as the girls from Sucker Punch, that movie.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
And so they were all in the different, like kind of schoolgirl with guns and samurai swords garb. That was pretty good. There were people that were dressed up in those giant Muppet costumes from Sesame Street with the Martians with the giant mouths. Okay. My wife just calls them the yip yips.
Yeah.
They make that noise. The yip 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 yip. Mm-hmm. that was pretty awesome. There was two of them. You had stormtroopers. You had your Jango or Boba Fett's. I geeked out because there was a Space Ghost.
Oh yeah, nice.
I was excited about that. Yeah, those were some of my favorites. Can't think of too many more, really. Mm-hmm. But you saw a lot of Doctor Who cosplay, and you saw a lot of Star Trek, for sure. Mm-hmm. Oh, as we were getting lunch, Daryl DMC from Run DMC, he was there. He's like got a book of his own. A comic book, and so like right in the middle as we're in the Quiznos line, he just starts like he shows up and they start busting some rhymes like right there in the middle of the con. So that was pretty awesome.
Really? Yeah, that is awesome.
Yeah. It was like that was one of those moments where I was like, this is surreal. What I wish I would have, I wish I would have gone to some of the panels, but that really packed the day just between standing in line and hitting all the merch tables and hitting some of the artists that I wanted to meet. Like that really sapped the majority of the day, and we really wanted to there was a few panels we wanted to hit, but when somebody wasn't at a table, they would leave a note about when they were going to be back, and so that kind of axed a few of the panels. Like, we knew that Bill Amend was going to be at his table at 2. There was a panel that we kind of wanted to see at 2. Well, we're not leaving without his autograph, because that was one that at least 2 of us really wanted.
Sure, yeah. So, what would you say is, what's your least favorite part of the whole experience?
My least favorite part of the experience was seeing people with the stacks. That kind of bugged me.
Yeah.
When people would walk up to a creator with just like 7 books, and that just felt really impersonal, and I didn't like that much. Mm-hmm. That was my main beef. Everything else about it was very cool. There's a lot of people. The con food prices are pretty expensive, and the fact that you're paying $40 for somebody's name on a piece of paper. I mean, like, those are some economic things, so it's like, wow.
Yeah.
You know, and I can't take pictures of people that are just sitting behind a table. I'm not even taking a picture with them, you know, but I'm going to get yelled at for taking a picture of a guy just standing there. Like, I could run over there and give him a high five, but I can't take a picture of him.
Yeah. Now, you had mentioned that this was your first mid to large size con.
Yes, yeah.
And
I've done some little ones, but this was the first time where I've had like huge media guests like this.
And you also mentioned you learned a bit about con etiquette, obviously the stacks of comics and stuff like that. Was there anything else that you, like any other piece of knowledge that you're like, if I'm going to a con, if I go to a con this size again, I need to remember to bring this or do this or avoid this?
Well, I kind of planned things out a little bit in advance, and one of the things that I found super useful was having a backpack.
Mm-hmm.
If I didn't have a backpack, then there's no way I would have been able to keep everything straight. Also, I knew to carry cash because, yeah, some booths would take credit cards and stuff like that, but not everybody did. And so getting up to the front of the line and then finding out that, oh, you can't pay for this would be kind of that would have stunk, especially in some of the really long lines. Mm-hmm. So, I did a little bit of research, and so those were some of the things that I knew coming in was get there early. We got there about an hour early so that we weren't way in the back of the line. If you can get a pre-sale on your ticket, do that, because the line for day of tickets was just crazy. So I definitely recommend, if you're going to go to a con, go ahead and do it early as far as getting your tickets is concerned, because once we got our will call tickets and we were up in the line, and once they opened the doors, we were in, and we could have been in any line that we wanted to be in right away. Mm-hmm. So those were all good things to know in advance. And I went with a group that they weren't newbies. This was like their third or fourth Planet Comicon. Granted, this was one of the biggest ones that they've been to, but it was good to have them because they kind of knew what they were doing.
Since we got Melanie here, I figure we could do your segue into recent reads. You had a story that was kind of connected to the Comic-Con, to the
Sure.
Yeah. So.
Okay, yeah.
Awkward segue.
Hey. Recent reads.
Recent reads.
Okay, so the first recent read that I read was one that I picked up at the con, and on the list of people that were going to be there was this artist named Tim Mayer, and he is a local artist, and I had bought one of his books at Krypton, actually. And so when I saw his name on the list, I thought, oh yeah, hey, I can bring that one and get that signed. And it was kind of interesting, like going to an independent artist and author's table and then handing them this thing. It was like the roles reversed for a second, because I slapped this down in front of him, and he just goes, "Oh my goodness, where did you get that?" Like. For a second there, I was the rock star, I guess, just because I had one of his really obscure books, and so that was a pretty cool moment. So he signed that, and then they upsold me on their current book, which I'm so glad they did. It's called The Anywhere Man, and it's just it's a 3-issue run. It looks like it's a mini series, and it's done by Tim Mayer, was the artist, and then Jeff Lawler is the writer of the series. And it's like, looking at the art style right off the bat, it's black and white. And Tim Mayer, he does kind of this distorted contour line type of style. Like, for the most part, he renders things with this contour line, and then he does kind of basic patterning. And he gets really into textures. It looks, like his line work really zooms in on textures and wrinkles and those kinds of things. So really cool, stylized contour line is how I'd kind of describe his style. And kind of the premise of the story is that there's this guy that is a Iraq war veteran. So he's come back from some tours in Iraq, and he's having a hard time acclimating to life after the war. And so he is basically living off of his vet benefits, and he basically is a drunk. And so at the beginning of the book, he winds up getting kicked out of the bar. He got cut off, so he's headed home or wherever, and he crashes his car. And then he, like in this moment where he's crashed his car, he's kind of fixating on not wanting to be here. I've got to get out of here. I got to get out of here. Next thing you know, this is where the art really ties in too, is you see him kind of distorted, almost like a Salvador Dali painting. So you take those contour lines and it's like twisted, and it implies this teleportation in a pretty interesting way. So boom, he's back in Iraq. So 1 second he's in this horrible car wreck because he's a drunk driver, and he smashes into this building. Boom, he's in Iraq. And he doesn't understand what's going on. So he's like, he doesn't want to be here. There's no way I want to be here. And so next thing he knows, he's back at his mom's house. And so he goes inside and he's with his mom and whatnot, and he's like, I don't know what's going on. And then he's like, I need somebody that can help. And then he's back in his apartment. And in his apartment, he's in there for like all of a panel before the door is basically being burst in. And he gets, for lack of a better word, kidnapped and brought back to like this interrogation room where they kind of explain what's going on here, where he crashed into this building while they were doing these experimentations on this technology, and for whatever reason, he absorbs that technology, and they're trying to figure it out. And so that's kind of the setup for wherever it's going to go next. At the end of the first issue, he kind of escapes, and so you kind of get this idea that they're going to continue pursuing him. He's going to continue trying to figure out what's going on, and that's kind of where it's at. So it was a really intriguing read that I kind of happened upon by accident, just because I met these guys at the con, and they were super friendly.
That sounds really interesting.
Yeah, it does.
Yeah.
And you can find them on right at the end of the book. It says to go ahead and check them out on Facebook to find out more about the series. And so it's the Anywhere Man on Facebook. So if you're on Facebook, just kind of search that out. And they both have their own websites as well. It's Jeff Lawler, JEFFLAWLER, no spaces, .blogspot.com, and then Tim Mayer, TIMMAYER, .wordpress.com.
I imagine they're just independently distributing the book.
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't know what the page count was, but it was it was a pretty good page count, and there's no ads. It's beautifully rendered. As far as something that's entirely black and white is concerned, just the line work from an art standpoint, it's an incredible piece, and I would highly recommend it.
One thing that me and Melanie both read was Moonknight #1, and I searched this out because I heard a little bit about Moonknight. I've never read any Moonknight before, and I'm not currently reading. I've fallen behind on All New X-Men and Uncanny X-Men, so I'm not currently reading any Marvel, so I wanted to try to pick this up and check it out. Have you read any Moonknight, Jesse?
Just, mostly books and stories where he is not really the main focus. Like, he's there, and he plays a major part, but he's not, like, the focus of it.
Yeah, I don't think he's had too many long, ongoing solo series.
Yeah. They're usually, like, mini-series, or, like, they start as an ongoing, and then they wind up running about a year, and that's about it.
With Moonknight, he's almost a Batman type in a way. He's a rich guy, I guess he's not really a Batman type at all. He's a rich guy, but like there was some deal where he died way back when and resurrected by some type of Egyptian god type thing,
or god or possibly demon.
Or demon.
It's hard to say.
But basically, the guy's crazy. I guess the other solo issues is kind of played up like a multiple personality. What do they call it? They have a new term for that. They don't call it that anymore.
Dissociative disorder.
Yeah. They played that up, and in this one, they're not so much playing up that he actually has these other personalities, just that he thinks he does, or something like that. It's really weird. When it gets into... There's this weird sequence where he's talking to like a psychologist, and this is just a little part. Most of it is him doing a little detecting work and helping out the police with this serial killer, basically. Mm-hmm. And that part of the book, I enjoyed all the book, but it was like really straightforward. Mm-hmm. Just kind of like, here's this guy. The police call him in. They do some like exposition to explain, that technically the police shouldn't be consulting him because he's a known murderer.
Yeah.
Or at least that Moonknight is a known murderer, so they have to refer to this guy as Mr. Knight. Yeah. They can't say Moonknight because then they'll have to take him in. I thought that was interesting.
Yeah, I like that part too.
And so they have him consult... Oh, what was that?
Oh, it just made me think of Goldmember. You're like, don't say mole. Don't say Moonknight. Mm-hmm. Moonknight.
Mm-hmm. And they have him consult on this it's not necessarily a serial killer, but kind of. It's this guy on a killing spree type thing. Mm-hmm. And then from there, he basically goes and takes care of the guy himself.
Yeah.
And leaves the cops behind. But he's kind of an interesting character because he's like I say that he's a Batman type in that he's this rich guy, so he's got means, and he's like go after evildoers in the night. Mm-hmm. Except he wears all bright white. Mm-hmm. And and at one point they mention, why he goes after people at night, why wear white? And he's like, so they see me coming. He wants them to see him coming. Mm-hmm. And the artwork is really cool because, and I'm not sure who did the art offhand, but the artwork is cool because it's kind of the artwork's nice and it's like a standard comic book look, except for Moonknight, the way they draw him, it's almost like they don't color him at all. Like everybody else has got regular type coloring with shading and all that, Mm-hmm. And it's like with him, he's just white with the inked pencils mm-hmm. and no like shading or anything. So he really like pops on each panel and page he's in. Mm-hmm. I thought that was an interesting decision.
Yeah.
So he's just flatted.
Yeah, exactly. He's totally like he's flatted, whereas everybody else has the added detail from the shading and coloring and stuff. Mm-hmm. At least when he's in his suit. When he's sitting there in his suit and he takes his mask off, then his face looks normal. But the suit's always got that flat white look.
Yeah.
Huh.
And then it gets really bizarre at the end where he's talking to a psychologist, but then that kind of gets really weird. Mm-hmm. So I would definitely check it out. I'm interested to see where it goes. He kind of seems like an interesting character. It's hard to get a lot of his personality out of this issue. You know what I mean?
Right.
Mm-hmm.
It's it's not a lot of setup, but it's basically set up like, it's a number one, and Marvel's been doing the all new now or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
So they're pushing,
Marvel now. Yeah.
Yeah, so they're pushing, a jump on point. So it's definitely a jump on point. Mm-hmm. I would check out more issues. I'm curious about it.
Yeah, me too. It seems interesting. Mm-hmm. And another real quick Batman correlation. He's very detective-y.
Yeah.
He's not just like, oh, there's a bad guy, I'm gonna go kick his butt. He's like analyzing the crime scene and figuring out things that the cops are even like, how do you know that? He's like, well, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah, that's part of what was interesting about him going after the bad guy is that the whole thing was like he analyzed the crime scene and then he's like, most likely the guy's going to be here based on clues and his deduction. Mm-hmm. And then he goes after the bad guy's there and they have a confrontation, but I enjoyed it. Yeah. Did you have something specific you want to bring up?
Oh, sure.
Okay.
Okay. Then my recent things that I've started reading were the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and Samurai Jack.
How far do you recall? You got at least 10 issues in the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles.
Hold on, I can find out for sure. But both of those are very much like, only 10 actually. I'm about to start the 11th one. Very much like the show, so if you enjoy the show, you'll enjoy the books, because I do. And I was saying, they're lighter, so it's nice when you read, like I do. I read a lot of serious stuff, a lot of death, and a lot of kind of just really horrible stuff happening to people in some of the stuff that I read, like, all the, besides Batman and whatnot, but...
A lot of dark books.
Yeah.
Can I jump in for a second?
Real quick. Yeah.
On Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, I couldn't say which issue, but I am within the first 10 issues still. First off, the reincarnation concept is weird, but I really like that backstory, and that is a part where the book did get pretty heavy. The backstory behind the man with the four sons, who they kind of they straight say is, Splinter and the Turtles in a previous form. But I was really shocked that the bad guys lopped their heads off and then killed the guy. Like, I guess I should have seen it coming, but I was not in that case that it did get pretty heavy, but I was really surprised by that.
Yeah. I kind of saw it coming, but I'm me. And from the movies, it kind of, you already know that at least Splinter, if not the rest of them, is a reincarnation of some ancient Japanese person.
I guess.
Well, dude.
No, okay.
In fact, that exact character.
I know, but I thought in the movies.
How many of them did you watch?
Oh, I did not watch. The first three. There were only the first three, weren't there? Live action. I only watched Turtles. Well, the third one.
Technically, as I push up my glasses, they have the TMNT movie, and as far as live action goes, there's just the three. Yeah. But I think Splinter, he's not necessarily Hamato Yoshi, but he basically becomes like the extended version of Hamato Yoshi because he was his rap, wasn't he? Yeah.
Oh, you're right. You're right.
In the movie, he is, but in the cartoon, he was straight up Hamato Yoshi.
Okay. Well, you're kind of right too. Okay. We're both right, both wrong.
Oh, I accept that.
Okay. Anything?
He's right, but she's right. They're both right.
Yeah. But it didn't. I was expecting it, and maybe that's why it didn't shock me. And plus, I'm compared to the other things that I read.
Yeah, that's true.
It's light. Okay, and then the other one is Serenity Leaves on the Wind, which is a continuation of the whole Firefly group, or the ones that are still around after the movie Serenity. And I only read the first issue so far, but it's pretty good, and it seems to also follow pretty well. And I like Firefly, I like Serenity, and I'm excited to have it continue. And I have not read any of their other stuff.
It's almost like you knew Jesse was going to ask you if you've read any of their other stuff.
But yeah, there's a handful of other side books where they extend and kind of flesh out some of the characters. Like Shepherd Book is no longer around, so they do a whole mini series that's actually in hardcover where they talk about a little bit more where he came from.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Were there any other titles you wanted to mention, Jesse?
Well, yeah, I've got. Well, we could continue with the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles just a little bit. They started a miniseries called the Utrom Empire. It's a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles miniseries, and I think they're into their third issue. I've only read the first two, and that continues with some storylines that you guys probably haven't hit yet, but it really expounds on a little bit more of Krang's backstory. They've been doing a lot of like mini-series and micro-series about the about each character. The first arc, they followed a micro-series about each of the main heroes, and then they did a micro-series about each of the main villains. And so we get to hear a little bit more about like Krang's backstory, as well as Baxter Stockman's backstory, all these different characters. And this Utrom Empire kind of ties the present in with some of those what they called a micro series, some of those backstories. So we're fleshing out a little bit more of what Krang did after sort of what you could call his origin. And we're seeing how it's impacting things in the present as far as the main title goes. Mm-hmm. And so I don't want to spoil anything that's going to happen since you guys are reading the book, but I just wanted to throw it out there because it's an interesting miniseries for anybody that really likes where that storyline is going with Baxter Stockman and the Fugitoid and Krang and all the characters we would have known of as being Weapon X, or not Weapon X, but Dimension X characters from the old cartoon. Mm-hmm. They're taking that and they're kind of expanding that, and we're seeing some lesser known characters from like the old cartoon series. They had the like the Triceratops looking dinosaur guy. He comes into play into. Well, they show up, but this is really obscure. This is a really obscure character, and they're pulling him in, and it's kind of an interesting way that they're pulling it in. And I just thought I'd mention it because the art style is pretty interesting in some of these side books. And the artist is Andy Kuhn, and the writer for this series is Paul Allure, and I've been one of his Twitter followers for a little while, and he's a pretty interesting writer to kind of follow. And he's been doing a lot of these micro-series stints. So.
I need to look some of those up because when I was reading, I mentioned to him, I'm like, there's like all these little micro-series that have stuff happening that they're referencing, and I don't know what's happening because I haven't read any of them. And there's like, I can't remember her name, but like the White Fox, I think she is character.
Oh, Alopex, yeah.
Yeah, like... It seemed like, from what it was doing, like they introduced her in one of those, and I was like,
they fleshed her out.
I need it now because I need to know.
Yeah, some of them are like, some of them will tie almost directly in, and some of them have very little, like they're just a one-off. But they're pretty fun, especially I'd say the first series. With all the heroes for sure, because you really get to dig into the mindset of each of the individual turtles, mm-hmm. and you get to see kind of how they differ. Like one of my favorites is the Donatello one, because I feel like they've really fleshed out Donatello in this new series, mm-hmm. and given him more personality rather than being like the blue Power Ranger of the group, where it's like, oh, we don't know how to explain this, Donatello.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah.
Beyond just the exposition guy.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. Which, ironically, have you ever seen? This is a total tangent. Have you ever seen Word Girl on PBS?
No.
There is a guy actually called Exposition Guy, and he looks like me with brown hair.
Oh, that's great.
I found that out this week. So,
that's great.
Sorry.
No, that's good. Someday I'll get into the story about how kids used to yell Mr. Kiefer at me.
Oh,
did I ever tell you that?
I suppose because you have a ponytail.
I have a ponytail and I had some facial hair all the time. Oh. In fact, there's this. I used to walk to work when I lived in Fremont, and there was mm-hmm. this house I would walk by at a certain time, and there were always kids in the backyard every day. No. Mr. Kiefer, and I'd be like, I'm not him, you know. One day I walked by, and They're like, Mr. Kiefer, and I'm like, I'm not him. The kid goes, yes, you are! I was like, I got frightened. I was like, oh.
I get that a lot where they'll say, I saw you and you were here, and I'm like, no, I wasn't. So at least once that was probably you.
Yeah, I guarantee at least once. All the time. At the mall, I'd be going to a movie. Yeah, anyway.
Oh.
That's pretty much the story. But yeah, I used to get that all the time. I wanted to mention real quick before we move on to also Animal Man. The last issue of Animal Man came out, and I was super excited for this issue because we started reading. We started reading Animal Man because it tied into Swamp Thing so heavily with the Rot World event at the beginning of it went on for the first year of the New 52. And Animal Man's a pretty good title. It was one of those. It's like one of the most surprising titles to me, to where, like I said, just because it tied into Swamp Thing, I started reading it, and I think there's a lot of the Rot World stuff that I actually liked more during Animal Man than Swamp Thing.
Yeah,
really good book, and it's heavy. It's one of those heavy books. It's not necessarily. Sometimes it could be fun, but there was also a lot of heavy stuff in it. And the last issue finally came out, and I was very disappointed.
Yeah, me too.
Because it's like a very nothing issue. There's at least one big thread that they set up a few issues ago that you kind of expect anything to happen with, and they don't. There's like a very subtle mention of it.
There's like a single panel that implies he's thinking about it.
Yeah.
And that's it.
And then otherwise, the issue itself is pretty much, like, it's not bad as like a series closer. You know, it's called Goodnight Animal Man.
Yeah.
But for the most part, all it is a recap of the whole series. And it doesn't address the one issue. I believe it's being written by, Jeff Lemire. Jeff Lemire is going to be doing basically Justice League of America. They're changing the title, but
isn't it supposed to be for Canada?
Well, they were debating, because he's Canadian, and they were debating changing it to Justice League of Canada, but they decided that probably wouldn't be good for other readership, I'm guessing.
Yeah.
So it's going to be Justice League United. I could be wrong about that title. I'm sorry if I am. But he's writing that, and the thought process is that'll probably be something that's going to be addressed in that comic book, because that's going to be kind of more of a galactic style story.
Right.
So I was just really bummed that they didn't, because that was like the last couple issues. I heard the series was ending, and I was like, oh man, it sets this potentially also really heavy situation up. So I was excited because I thought it was going to get addressed. And it just didn't. It was almost ignored. So it's still a good book, and it was not a terrible end to a series because most of the immediate storyline was wrapped up. But there's that one huge thread, and I was really disappointed that didn't get addressed. So anyway, Animal Man, check it out. It's still a good show or good book.
Yeah, jolly good show. It's a jolly good show.
Man, I feel bad. I should explain to the listeners. We lost a big chunk of the recording for recent reads. So I kind of feel like I'm cutting it short, but I don't want to take up all night, all your guys' time tonight. Yeah, so I suppose we should probably move on. Do we want to jump into our poll list?
Yeah, let's do that.
Okay. The poll list. Ooh, I need to check. So I think how this is going to work, since somebody recommended, and this is actually one that somebody entered in the other. So this is a recommendation from a listener or somebody that come across the link on Reddit or Twitter. Batman, Death of the Family. And since we'd all read that, we're like, well, yeah, that'd be great. We can do that the next episode. So then I was thinking that sets us off right. We're going to do that one, and then I'm going to take a look at the poll list right now, and then we're going to decide what we're going to read this next coming month.
Okay.
Oh, that's a good call.
So, whatever the votes are at now is what we're going to be reading, and that's kind of, I think, how we'll do it for the rest of the show. So every time we do an episode, we'll look at the poll list, see where it's at, and that'll be our next assignment.
Something to look forward to.
Yep. So, assuming we get through it, we do have access to it.
Right.
We will be talking about Mouse next episode.
Oh.
Have you ever read that?
I have not. That's on the list of shame anyhow, or the wall of shame.
Yeah, it's supposed to be great. It's one of the ones where they talk about like the best of the medium, and it's on all like the greatest lists and recommended graphic novels lists.
Mm-hmm. And actually, now that I look at it, all three of those on there, I put on my list of things that I need to read at some point in time. Mm-hmm. So this is going to be good.
Yeah. So
yeah,
we'll be talking about Mouse next episode, but this episode,
if we get through it.
If we get through it.
I don't know how.
Yeah. It's a graphic novel. I don't know how long it is. I believe it was originally released in 2 parts, but I have the complete Mouse.
I'm not worried about me. I'm worried about you guys.
I know, but it's not like it's not like an ongoing.
Uh-huh.
I don't know how long it is, but at least it's not like a 100-issue run or something.
Right.
In which case, I was thinking if we get suggestions for ongoing runs, I know Punisher Max was kind of an ongoing. We could either just tackle the first volume, the first book, or the first storyline arc or couple story arcs.
Yeah.
Or we could kind of research what people consider the essential story arc of that series is. Mm-hmm. So we don't necessarily have to tackle a whole series. Mm-hmm. Plus, then, if we like the series, we can go off and read it on our own,
Yeah.
It could be like the sequel to Swamp Studies, if that's the case.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
So
yeah, Mouse.
Cool.
Okay. Batman. Death of the Family.
All right.
I don't have notes up for this. This is Batman. Hold on, I think I have it. No, you have it on your phone.
Yeah.
It's Batman issue
13
through 17.
Yeah, 13 through 17. Written by Scott Snyder. The bulk of the art is Greg Capullo. Of course, the Batman title. Creative team. There are backups that are also written by Scott Snyder, but have art by other people. I feel bad for not doing my research and having their names offhand. I do not. But anyway, that is what we're doing. I'm not sure how to best approach this. I read, in preparation for this specifically, I read the hardback collected trade of it. Mm-hmm. I've read the single issues before. You reread the single issues.
Yeah.
And then Jesse's read it before.
Yeah.
So.
Well, we all had.
I spot reread. I read a couple things. Well, first of all, we've got to go full spoiler on this, don't we?
Good call. Full spoiler. If you haven't read it, ignore this and go read it right now.
Yeah.
I still recommend it. I enjoyed it the first time. I enjoyed it this time. There might be a couple issues that I'll mention, but I enjoyed it and still would recommend people read it.
Yeah.
So.
I think you had more problem with it than I did.
The second time?
Yeah.
My overall takeaway from it was that I enjoy it, and I even just thinking back on it, even my issues with it, it really starts out as a very fun story arc. Mm-hmm. I think most of my issues and most of the general issues that you find online were with how it ended.
Yeah. On my read through again, I found, and this is how it was when I first read it, I really enjoy the first issue a lot. Mm-hmm. You have notes on issue 1.
Oh, I have notes on every issue.
Well,
but I'm not going to go through this. I have
Okay. We're gonna let you take the lead for a second, and it'll help jog our memory.
Okay, because I have 4 pages of notes I took.
Okay, your first note on issue 1.
Okay, well that was just I like the beginning, and the talk about the bad omens with all the rain they were having and the two-headed lion.
I really like how it starts off.
Mm-hmm,
I mean, it could be... I don't think it comes across cheesy, and they even fix it in dialogue, because it starts off, it's talking about bad omens, and there's a two-headed beast born, and the river flowing backwards.
Yeah.
And then Gordon, they kind of dismiss it as like, well, that's what the papers will say if something really bad happens, you know?
And then, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So I enjoyed that. And then a lot of what I wrote down is nitpicky stuff. Like, Joker goes in and kills all these cops. Like, shortly after that. But this is Gotham, so they fight with, or deal with, supervillains all the time. And even Joker probably before. But he comes in, and it's like, bam, killed that guy, bam, killed that guy. They, like, don't even put up a fight at all. It just seems unrealistic to me. I had issues with that.
I love the taunting he does of Gordon. The conversation, where they literally make him a boogeyman. The conversation, or the dialogue about hiding under Gordon's bed at night, listening to the sad things he says in his sleep.
Yeah.
That stuff is great.
Uh-huh.
I will agree with you. It bugged me a little bit the first time and a little bit more the second time, the fact that I understand the Joker's different now. He's angrier. He's doing things with his own hands. It still is a little unrealistic that in terms of a Batman book, that he walked into a police station and was just snapping police necks left and right.
Yeah.
Being totally unarmed.
Okay. And I think they said, I don't know, it could have been a later after there were more deaths, but it said he killed like 19 cops or something. Really?
He's got to have sore arms after that.
Yeah.
And it's not easy to snap necks.
No, it's not.
No.
I mean, not that I know or anything. You can't just do it.
Yeah, no.
Again, I haven't tried, but you can't.
Yeah, the second read-through, I found that part a little cheesier.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah.
Okay. Well, I might skip over some of them.
And both times I find it odd that the Joker's like talking to him, and then the lights come on and Batman's there. It just feels like an odd transition to like, the Batman should have seen Joker coming out on his way in or something.
Yeah.
Like, it's just, Batman's just there. It's like, well, if Batman could just be there as soon as the lights come on, he probably could have been there a couple minutes earlier.
Yeah, I had issue with that, and also, why was he there? It's not like they were all, like, radioing and stuff. They were all cowering in fear waiting to get their necks snapped, rather than doing anything proactive. So, I don't know. It's
like you said, it is a little bit nitpicky, but it's a minor gripe. It's one of those where you just kind of have to look the other way, you know.
I know, I'm sorry.
Benefits the story. But no, I wanted you to mention that because I agree.
Okay. And then,
I don't want to just praise the book, so it's okay to have some nitpicks. I want to be I want to criticize it constructively.
Okay, well, I have this kind of written chronologically, like I would read and then stop and write stuff down. But I might jump ahead for a second. Cause this is another area with this kind of, when, all the policemen later were poisoned, you would think Batman's like a super detective, and the, commissioner, whoever he is, mentions that they just had the floor cleaned.
Oh yeah.
That would automatically, if I were a super detective, I would be like, oh, that's an outside, variable with chemicals. I should probably check that.
Yeah, the mayor mentions that. Yeah.
And that was also, I wrote down, I'm like, okay, after Joker's visit in the floor shrine, are there even any cops left? Because, man.
I believe it's during that sequence, I do love the little conversation between Batman and Commissioner Gordon. When Batman's standing atop the elevator, and Commissioner's like, do I look, what does he say?
He said, does it show?
Does it show? And he's talking about how nervous he is because Batman's got all of their vitals on display. And Batman says no, but yeah, I thought was a good moment where it shows like how friendly Batman and Gordon are, that they're kind of close, and that Gordon be like, obviously he knows that.
I like that, and I like the little Batman, inner monologue that followed that, talking about trying, you being afraid and having to hide your fear because if they know you're afraid, they'll just keep coming, basically, and I thought they won't anyway. But I like that whole little spiel right there too.
On that first issue, one of the things that really struck me, and maybe I'm wrong, correct me if I'm wrong, but he kind of just like waltzes in a la Michael Myers style. Like, he doesn't say anything until he gets his face. Am I right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Mm-hmm.
I really dug that. It felt very classic horror. It was like, who is this guy? 'Cause, it's coming. But if you take yourself out of the story for a second, it's like, this is creepy. What's going on? And then boom, now he has his face. Now he has his voice, and he's back.
Mm-hmm.
That is something that I appreciated. Is for the most part, what Snyder did was we're gonna do a Joker story, and we're just going to turn it into a straight horror movie and almost pay homage to. You mentioned Michael Myers, and that's perfect because he's even running around in like a jumpsuit.
Yeah,
overall. Yeah. He's running around in a garage.
It is more of a suit, though. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Jumping towards the end a little bit when they have the big final confrontation, and they have the table set up. That is very Texas Chainsaw Massacre with the family around the table, and Batman kind of plays the role of depending which sequel it is, it's usually a chick, the main chick of the movie, strapped into the chair.
Yeah.
There's a chainsaw that comes up at one part where Joker's doing the.
I love that. It's the chainsaw in the stone.
Yeah.
Like the sword in the stone. Yeah.
He the horror influence is there. Mm-hmm. That Leatherface. It's so, just very. Sorry.
No, I was just going to say, it's kind of nitpicky, not a big deal, but from the first issue, the first guy he takes hostage was John Claridge or something. He dressed him up as him, and did the hands behind his back, and then later he had Harley dress up as him, and I'm like, why is he having other people dress up as him? Because he's so scary and creepy looking right now. He should just stand there, and it would inspire fear.
It is kind of another kind of motif of having the Joker dress other people up as him, and then him and Batman later. But.
Yeah.
When they kind of call back to that at the very end of that issue and the start of the next one with the vat, with the acid. And so that makes me think of with the movie, actually. That feels like a callback to the first Batman movie with Michael Keaton, where, he starts using the poison gas and everybody dies with a smile on their face.
Mm-hmm. There was this great bit of dialogue. I don't believe it was right at the beginning of the second issue, but it was while Batman... Okay, so Batman's after Joker. He thinks Joker dressed up in the Red Hood outfit because the Joker is recreating the first encounters he had with Batman.
Right.
Turns out it's Harley Quinn, but anyway, Batman gets knocked into this vat, which starts filling up with the chemical. I believe it's the beginning of the next issue. Batman's in there, and he's yelling out at Harley, where is he? Also, I enjoyed that Harley Quinn says, he's not my Mr. J anymore. He's different. I like that bit. If one of you guys has something to say,
I know what you're
on
going
that
to say.
part. I got to find this piece of dialogue real quick.
Well, at the beginning of that issue, he does this whole inner monologue thing about how he knows the contents of that chemical by heart.
Yeah.
And how he, when he can't sleep, he'll look at it again and just keep looking for what's that secret ingredient that created the Joker. Mm-hmm. What's that one thing that tipped it over the edge and created him? And I just thought that was interesting that, it's like the Joker still keeps him up at night kind of thing. Or he's still kind of tortured by what in the world caused this.
Mm-hmm.
And I like that they even kind of spell out the whole chemical compound of the makeup of what this chemical is.
Yeah.
Okay, 1 second and I'll have this dialogue. Something Harley says to Batman that I really enjoy. How do you close ads on this thing? Okay. Because Batman's in there and he's screaming out, where's Joker, Harley? Harley says he's gone, Bat's gone. Maybe you'll be the next one, like I always thought you would be. Maybe you'll come back like he used to be back then. I like the idea that Harley entertained the thought that Batman will be the next one to snap and be a Joker type.
Yeah.
And that she always,
Mm-hmm.
That's almost like she wanted him to, that was something she thought about. Mm-hmm. I thought that was interesting. I just like when, they jump into, that's the idea of Batman's almost as crazy as all the villains. Mm-hmm. It's just that little bit that holds him back.
She's like or originally, I don't know if she is still post 52, but she was originally like a shrink for Arkham, right? Yeah. So she would know. She would know that kind of thing too.
Oh yeah, I hadn't even thought about that, but yeah, you're right. Mm-hmm. And yeah, she still was. Her origins mostly the same. There's little differences, but yeah, mostly the same. Mm-hmm. Also, the abuse and psychological abuse that Joker puts Harley through in the little bit that Harley's in this, making her believe he's going to cut her face off, is really harsh. Mm-hmm. It's really brutal.
Yeah.
They made him scary again, I think, for sure.
Oh, and he even tells her, okay, so she thinks he's going to... I'm sorry to get on dialogue kicks. There's only a couple little bits of dialogue that really stuck with me. And this is another one of them was...
That was at the end of the episode before.
The end of the first issue.
Yeah.
In the backup story. She believes, the Joker's going to cut her face off. And she says something to the effect of, will you still find me beautiful? And Joker says something like, oh, Harley, what makes you think I ever found you beautiful?
Yeah.
Something like that.
He's so mean.
Uh-huh.
Oh, Mr. J.
Mm-hmm. Okay, I'm moving on. Sorry.
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
But
just yeah.
After the vat bit, I love this sequence, and it kind of ties into the horror story thing that you were talking about. But when Batman gets back to the Batcave and he gets out and he's automatically talking to Alfred, and then he realizes he's not there.
Oh yeah.
And he wanders around. And he's like, Alfred, and I love he's walking around and it's like creak. It like shows the creaks of him walking around this big empty house.
Oh yeah.
I love that.
And I hadn't thought about it till you mentioned it. I enjoy that he gets back to the Batcave, hops out of the car, and is just instantly talking to Alfred because for the most part, Alfred's always just standing there waiting.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then he finds you mentioned the cassette tape.
Yeah, the cassette tape. And I'm like, apparently this was written in 1985, because...
Yes!
I was impressed that Bruce still had a cassette deck to play it on.
Mm-hmm.
And the Joker is an audiophile, or he's really into retro tech.
Yeah. Something I didn't think about till just now, since we were talking about the cassette tape. I enjoyed the little the clues that Joker would leave to lead Batman to the next thing. Mm-hmm. The extra chemical in whatever that would lead him to Ace chemical. And then...
Well, and Gordon. He goes to Gordon next because Gordon's on the recording.
Yeah.
I enjoyed those. Those were... some of those were really clever, I thought.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then after that, mostly what I've got is a lot of Batman kind of beginning. He doesn't want to share, and everybody's all butthurt, and...
I think... Because then, and this is the part where the story sags a little bit for me, naturally kind of in the middle, but where it really is, it's where the drama is. Batman is being extra Batman, to put it nice, Mm-hmm. He doesn't want to tell anybody anything. Alfred's been taken, and the only person he tells is Nightwing, and he insists that nobody else gets involved, and it feels slightly forced that they have... I mean, Batman's prone to pushing them out anyway, but it feels slightly forced that he's so forcefully keeping them out. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, they are also extra whiny about things.
Yeah, they do.
Yeah.
The conversation in the cave, where he finds out about finding the Joker card in the cave.
Mm-hmm. That's in the third, or issue 15, the third of
the third issue. That conversation drives me a little crazy, and I think all the characters in there are unrealistically too willing to jump right on Batman's back about it.
Yeah.
And also, for the most part, it's like it happened before you were even around, so how is he... I don't know. They just play like... They're upset at him for never telling them, but...
Mm-hmm. And even after...
I'm on Bruce's side on this one.
Me too, because even after he explains his reasoning, which, is a pretty good reasoning, he's like, going underwater for miles at 50 miles an hour, nobody can hold on that long.
Mm-hmm.
That makes perfect sense.
It's science!
It's science, accept it. Stop being so angry about it.
Uh-huh.
I don't know.
And I'm Batman.
Yeah, exactly. See, that's what he should have said. That would have ended the conversation instantly.
Mm-hmm. But back to the beginning of the third issue. Oh, one of my favorite parts of the whole thing is the pupil talk, when he's talking about how you look at people and, when they're happy or whatever, their pupils expand.
There's seven pupil movements that, reflect emotion, and then 15 variations on each and all that. Yeah.
And then the Jokers don't move, they're just tiny little, what does he call them?
They're little tiny black pearls.
Yeah.
But little pinpoints of, it's just he hates everyone all the time.
Yeah.
His pupils never change.
I like that a lot.
Yeah.
And then to jump a little bit later, it's an interesting bit of internal monologue that Batman has about being afraid that he's going to see the Joker's pupils expand with love.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, I remember that too. I don't really know a whole lot about art, but there's a couple spots, and there in the third issue there was one where they punched Joker, and and the face shifts, and so his face is on sideways, as there's a really good sequence.
Yeah, that was good. I don't want to get too into it at all, but one of the tie-ins, I think it was the Batman and Robin tie-in, which was not necessarily great on its own, but one of the tie-ins actually, whoever did the art on that one, it might have been that Patrick Gleason, who the listener isn't going to know that I talked about earlier, did a lot of crazy play with the fact that his face could be changed and moved on his face, and at one point, he's got the Joker, I think, hanging upside down, or maybe he just puts his face upside down, so his eyes are looking through the mouth hole, and you can see his teeth through the eye holes.
Yeah, I remember that one.
Yeah, there was some cool play, and Capullo didn't do too much of that, but yeah, when he takes that punch, yeah, definitely cool.
And then shortly after that, there's Batman waking up, and the family's there, and then Alfred comes in, except he's got the Joker face, and that was alright. But what I like is that right after that, he wakes up, and except for being in the bed, he's in the Batcave. But it's the same circumstance. He wakes up and he's oh, and then the whole family's there right around him. And I'm it's kind of like one of those things where you wake up from a nightmare and then you wake up into another nightmare kind of thing.
It's a similar situation, but yeah.
Yeah. And this is more nitpickiness from me, but this is where we find out about his plans from Arkham and whatnot. And apparently he's been there for a while, and he's got all these guards he's keeping there, and all these other guards that he's blackmailing and sending home every day. And you would think there's people coming, bringing prisoners there, or visiting there, or doing something there. And I found that very implausible that
the Joker's taken over the whole asylum.
Yeah, for apparently quite a period of time, and nobody's found out or, slipped and told somebody or something.
That's one of those things where, I don't want to jump on it for being unrealistic, because it's a Batman comic book, blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But that really does kind of stretch. Once you get in there, it's cool. Mm-hmm. It's crazy, but it does stretch the plausibility pretty thin that he's completely taking over the whole asylum. And for the most part, nobody on the outside knows anything about it or has said anything about it.
Mm-hmm. Don't even notice the missing horses, even though I love the horsey bit.
The horse bit is great. Not necessarily the burning horse part. That's cool.
That is cool, too.
Looks very cool. But yeah, the bit where they're carrying, it's in one of the backups between issues. They're carrying in, he's having the guards or whoever carry in a horse. Mm-hmm. Which I don't know why they would be carrying it like that.
Yeah.
But the horse falls and lands on one of the guy's legs. And the Joker's upset, of course, and he's like, well, this horse is no good, or this horse is ruined.
I think.
This horse is ruined, and he shoots the horse in the head. And then one of the guys is like, what about Steve? The guy who the horse fell on. He's like, Steve is ruined, and he shoots Steve. That's a good Joker moment. I think that's one of my favorite, just Joker moments.
Yeah.
Well, Steve is ruined.
This whole, and maybe I'm wrong, but isn't this whole story arc, the death of the family, isn't it kind of a tie back to Death in the Family, where Jason Todd?
Most definitely. Oh yeah, it's definitely a play on that.
Because isn't there a moment in that, and maybe it's a different story arc, where the two of them face down each other, and you're trying to figure out if the Joker knows that Bruce Wayne is Batman. Is that in Death in the Family?
Yes, that's in the last issue. I think it was 4-issue arc. That's in the last issue. I hadn't made that connection.
It becomes like a huge. That becomes like an overarching plot point in this series. Is does he or doesn't he know who they are? Because he keeps alluding that, I know who all of you are. I know where you live, kind of thing. And I was trying to piece that together today, in whether or not that was what happened in Death in the Family or not.
No, you're right. It's when, and it's the whole, that situation is ridiculous, but it's when the Joker's walking in to this UN meeting or whatever, and Batman cannot do anything to the Joker because he's been anointed a, what's the word? Ambassador for...
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, he's been anointed an ambassador for this country. And as he walks in, Bruce Wayne's mean-mugging him, and Joker looks back, and it's like 6 panels, and it's just like back and forth between the two, and the expression like on both their faces doesn't change the whole time. Mm-hmm. But it's like you said, and jumping towards the end of this, Snyder even goes as far as to have Bruce Wayne's telling Alfred at the end of the story, at the end of all the stuff's happened, that he went to see the Joker a long time ago,
that's right.
And walked in and
as Bruce Wayne,
and held up the card that the Joker left in the Batcave and said Joker, and the Joker looked at the card and looked at him, and it just looked right through him. Mm-hmm. So that's when Batman knew he wasn't this is really jumping towards the end, but that's when Batman knew he wasn't a threat to coming into the Batcave and finding out his identity, because he doesn't care.
Yeah.
Right.
I don't think it's too far of a jump to make an interesting link thematically between that and, like you were mentioning, them staring each other down to where it's like, does he or doesn't he know?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And if he knows, does he care? Because he's just staring. But.
Sure. And it was kind of a bait and switch, too, because the whole time they're making it look like, that's the iconic run where Jason Todd as Robin dies. So the whole time we're kind of gearing up for, there's going to be a death.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Oh, it's a big bait and switch, and I think that's... I hate to get too much into this part right already, but I think part of what people were disappointed by in the ending is kind of... It's not that Snyder was trying to disappoint people, but he was definitely playing with expectations throughout the whole thing. Mm-hmm. And there was, at least if you followed it online, there was so much hype about it. And I think people were disappointed because it was kind of a bait and switch. Really, nobody in the Bat family died.
Mm-hmm. And I will say, especially the first time of course I already knew this time, but not that I wanted bad things for the family necessarily, but when he came out and he took took their things off and their faces were all bandaged up, mm-hmm. I thought that was pretty awesome, especially, when he then serves them their faces. That's so great. And then they were fine. And I was disappointed by that, the first time around at least.
I must say, just because, and not necessarily to be twisted, but because I think it would be a far more impactful and interesting story. Mm-hmm. I wanted it to be their faces.
Yeah.
It sounds so messed up,
Mm-hmm.
but like that would have been like actual serious like consequence from this whole thing.
Yeah.
Right. Or at least one of them.
At least one of them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like
yeah.
Dick Grayson. Dick Grayson without his face, he's like the pretty boy. So of Teen Titans and all.
Mm-hmm.
Good call.
So that would have been like, whoa. Now he's no longer, like the love interest of all these Teen Titan characters.
Mm-hmm.
Or even Red Hood, Jason Todd.
Oh yeah.
Just to like further be like, you're the one that Batman always fails. Mm-hmm. I'm really disappointed that they don't push him back towards being a more villain character, because he's pretty much just a hero in the New 52.
You reminded me, one of my favorite parts of that whole bit is when the Joker is talking to them, or I guess he's talking to Batman about them, and he's like, and I'm gonna get him, and get him, and get him again, and get him. Oh, yeah. And I love that little jab.
I don't have to get into it yet, but there's a lot of dialogue changes, and some of them are really weird. Like that, what made me think of it is that part, there's just little changes to where during that scene he's talking to Batman, and he's like, I'm going to get him, and her. And they changed it so that he's talking to them. And he says, I'm going to get you, and just like weird changes like that.
I don't really like that because it seems more appropriate for him to be talking to Batman because he's being so dismissive of them.
That was my thought process. I liked it better how it was in the single issues because it is almost like, because I would think that's how Joker would feel about them. He wouldn't necessarily address them. They're just basically props in the room that he doesn't like. Yeah. You know?
Yeah.
They're there as chess pieces so he can manipulate Batman.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
At least that's the take I prefer between the two dialogue versions.
Yeah.
We don't have to jump back, but some of my favorite bits in Arkham are where he's just kind of ruling all of the inmates. Like, he's just like running the riot act on Two-Face and the Riddler.
Oh, yeah.
And just making him do what he wants.
Mm-hmm.
No, yeah, we can... That's one of my favorite issues out of the 5. I think the first one and then the last 2, I think, are my favorite issues. Mm-hmm. And that's one of them. There's just... Again, speaking of the horror theme, the tapestry of flesh.
Oh, yeah.
And they even went to the point to... The inmates or whoever it was that they stitched together to make this tapestry are still alive. Like,
oh yeah,
that's got edge to it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was interesting to me that, well, first of all, they had so many other villains all kind of working together. Mm-hmm. But then when he goes, kind of goes in through, gets past the horse part basically. And starts going, like, through a stairway or something towards them. He flies through, like, what is it? Mr. Freeze, Clayface, and Scarecrow.
Like it's nothing.
Like it's nothing, like, real fast.
Yeah. That bugged me a little bit, but then I was like, but also, Batman's really mad. Mm-hmm. So that's how I justify it. It's like, Batman is on a mission.
Yeah.
So he just blows through them. But then you look at the stories where it's like a big story arc, where he's dealing with one of those villains. Yeah. And it, like, kind of cheapens those stories. Mm-hmm. But, yeah.
Yeah, he went through them real quick. And then the other ones, I don't know really that they did with Two-Face, or I don't recall. But the others, they had already kind of set up that he had went and approached, that Joker had gone and approached them, and they had special parts to play. Mm-hmm. So it, obviously made sense for them to last longer.
They're either, he convinced them to join there, or like, in Penguin's case, he blackmailed him into being there. Yeah. Oh, and
sorry, Jesse, because I know you said you like Two-Face, but at the end of that issue, the little extra bit, he like hands Harvey.
Yeah, big time. He does. He totally does. And that hurt my heart a little bit, but at the same time, I was like, if anybody's gonna do it, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And another interesting thing that I took note of is that in what are we talking about there? The 4th book is kind of what we're talking about right now. They actually have a Grawlix in there, and I appreciated that, so I had to write it down.
Yes, yeah, there's a Grawlix in issue 14 at the end where he's, what was he talking about? I don't know, but he throws out a Grawlix, and I thought, yes, there we go. That's why this is so appropriate for our first poll list.
Yeah, I liked it. So I was happy to see that.
And we got to talk about the finish, the climax of the whole thing.
Mm-hmm.
That is where most of the dialogue changes are. And some of them, like I said, I sent Jesse a message earlier because I found a post that compared the dialogue changes. Most of the dialogue changes are towards the end during the dinner scene and the final confrontation. And it's really weird, some of the changes that they made. Some of it I like. Some of the changes I like because, and I think this was a main motivator for Snyder to change some of the dialogue, was to clarify a little bit. Because after this arc, Death of the Family ends up referring to, it kind of causes the members of the Bat family to separate and put some distance between them and Batman.
Yeah.
And
right.
And some of the dialogue changes they made kind of clarifies how that would be the case.
Mm-hmm.
And then there's some of the homoerotic themes, the subtext.
Yeah.
Or sometimes it's pretty blunt. It's not really subtext.
Mm-hmm.
It's actually toned down a little bit.
Yeah.
And I thought that was odd. Despite, the second time reading through the hardcover, it seemed more blunt to me in the first part. But then, yeah, it really is. Okay, so Batman and Joker kind of scuffle.
Mm-hmm.
There's a lot of dialogue there. And then he's got Joker at the edge of the thing. Regardless of dialogue changes, I really like that moment where Batman's like, no, it's not going to be an accident if it happens.
Yeah.
And he's like, telling the Joker, like, maybe you push me to it this time type thing. And I enjoyed that.
Mm-hmm. I actually kind of liked the dialogue there, though, because that's when Batman called Joker darling and kind of turned it around on him.
I'm glad you mentioned that. Took it out.
Are you serious?
That's one of the dialogue changes. They took out darling.
Oh, well, I like that.
Batman doesn't call him darling. And that really bugs me because, and it's not even necessarily as a return of affection. It could be even viewed as like, sarcasm.
A self-slam?
Yeah, it's a self-slam.
Call back.
I should have hashtagged that. I didn't. I'm going to start hashtagging everything with that. But yeah, they took out that bit where, because he says, I'll whisper it to you about him knowing who Joker was before and his name. And yeah, they took out the darling, and that was like, I think that's the most disappointing because that's, I don't know, it just shows like, it's a little bit of Batman personality that you don't normally get, and I like that. And they took that out. So I was disappointed by that.
Mm-hmm.
But I find it interesting that I think Batman was calling his bluff. Because towards the end, when Batman, at the very last scene, Batman's in the Batcave, and it's got a picture of Joker's face on the computer, it says identity unknown.
Yeah.
So I don't think Batman knew who he was.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I had thought of that actually when we were talking.
He was calling his bluff, and Joker freaked out.
Mm-hmm. And I also like, though, this is later, like shortly after that, when he's talking to Alfred, and he says the reason that he didn't want to kill Joker, wasn't because, obviously that he loved him, or that he was worried if he killed him, he would go off, over the line or whatever, and not be able to come back. But that if he killed him, life would or fate or whatever, would just send someone worse to take his place. I really enjoyed that because, Joker's his big supervillain. Mm-hmm. So if you get rid of this big supervillain that's known, then who knows what could happen. I like that he had that.
You want to know something else?
What?
Change that part too.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
Well, these are the things that I really like about it.
Keep talking. I'm going to go grab the book real quick. I do like what they replaced that with, but I don't like that they replaced it because I agree. I like that bit.
Yeah.
I'll be right back. Keep talking.
Okay. Okay, well, here's something I can say real quick that isn't really doesn't pertain. Because, this is all one story, and from the first issue to the last, they had those little end bits that I actually really enjoyed. And when it was all over, and I go to the next page, and it's that stupid news thing that I hate. I was like,
the
no!
The Channel 52 segments at the end.
Yeah, I was so disappointed.
Was that with Ambush Bug?
Yeah. Okay. So which part were you talking about? Who was saying?
Bruce talking to Alfred.
Okay. Yeah, you're right. I knew it because I know this might not be the part.
No, it's after that.
Okay, this next one?
Maybe, yeah.
Okay, no, I'm just saying, Alfred. They know that he's wrong, don't they? About why I never did it before now? About all of it? Because he is wrong. I'll never let that happen. What he said. I'll never let it end up like that. Everyone gone except me and him. Because they changed a piece of dialogue. They just, there's just weird changes in it.
Yeah, no, I prefer the version that I read, the issue version.
There's little changes I like, and then there's several changes that seem unnecessary.
Yeah.
So, we don't have time to get into
It's
them
tough because it's like a retcon almost, where it's like either stick to your guns, this is how you wrote it, stick with it, or, we've recompiled it for a book type of situation, so now we're refining it. But I don't know, I would prefer that they just kept with the original because that's what most people read.
Yeah. I agree. And like I said, so Snyder wanted to change a few things to make it more clear. On the one hand, it's like, tough crap. If the reader didn't get it, then they didn't get it. Mm-hmm. And then on the other, and then it's also kind of like, well, if you have to change something, change it and then put the pencil down. Stop changing more.
Mm-hmm. Or better yet, what he could have done is they could have had one that was how it was, and then had an extra one. They could have made more money, and that's one with this changes. If you wanted to read it, which nobody would have, though, probably because it was already good.
Well, I wonder how much of it was Snyder's fault and how much of it was like an editor told him, this is the part you need to change this. This wasn't clear. How much of it was a conscious choice on Snyder's part and how much of it was like an editor telling him, well, you need to clean this up.
No, yeah, exactly, because Snyder takes full credit for it. He's talked about it. In fact, that's how I initially heard that there were dialogue changes in the first place was from Snyder himself on a podcast. He takes credit for it. He said he wanted to change this and that, and it was his idea. But also, the editors are pretty much his boss. I could also see him not wanting to throw his boss under the bus and possibly. I mean, he's pretty much DC's golden boy, but still, you don't want to rock the boat, when you got a good thing going on.
Right.
He's the new Jeff Johns.
Yeah, they love him. If they need a book to go up, a lot of times they'll figure some way to throw his name on it, and it usually helps sales.
Yeah.
People, and rightfully so, he's good. I enjoy him, but... Yeah, it's just one of those things. DC editorial's been doing a lot of really odd things since the reboot, so you could never tell.
Oh, and I saw that picture at the very end, which is jumping way back, but I was really sad when the little two-headed lion died. It hurt me inside.
Yeah, I agree.
It was unnecessarily mean. Okay, my very last thing on there.
Okay.
And Joker's gone, presumably dead and whatever, and it's all done and over with. And then he's analyzing the extra added element in the poison he used on them, and it's the big ha up on the screen, and that's the end, how it faded away with the ha. And they even did it with the panels moving up to it, so it's like ha 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 ha. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I thought that was great. That was a great way to end it, I thought.
Yeah, me too.
Because Joker got the final laugh.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of reminiscent of that iconic page in The Killing Joke where you've got him with his hands on his head and all the ha's behind him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like it when they throw onomatopoeia into a modern book because it makes me think of the '60s Batman.
Mm-hmm. And that's one thing I like about Death of the Family in general. He pays homage to Batman history itself, which was nice and kind of almost reassuring after the New 52 reboot, because all the little scenarios that the Joker recreates are from actual older Batman stories.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
So it brings at least those moments into the current continuity, which is important, especially when you reboot a story and a year later you essentially kill off Joker.
Yeah.
And then another year later you essentially kill off another main Batman villain who I won't spoil this time around. If you're interested in those, Jesse, I'll have to get you those.
That's...
You've
piqued my interest.
I'm sorry I spoiled it, but it's... and maybe the story will read better altogether.
Yeah, rather than waiting for the new issue. Yeah.
That's one thing I was curious about this story, Death of the Family, rereading it, because the first time I read it, and it was that month to month, and I was reading all the tie-ins, and honestly, you don't need to read any of the tie-ins for the main story. A couple of the tie-ins were okay, but for the most part, like, none of them really hold up to that main story.
Yeah.
How was the prelude? Because I didn't read any of the prelude. Because they were all in other books, I believe. Like, all the prelude takes place elsewhere, and then, it jumps right in with Batman, the main book.
For the most part, unnecessary. The Catwoman one was totally unnecessary. In fact, like, there was a prelude issue and then a tie-in issue, and they were both, like, literally on the fringe of, like, the Joker himself was on the fringe of anything that actually happened in those books. The Batgirl tie-ins were actually pretty good. Not great, but pretty good. And then Nightwing's was pretty good. That's when Nightwing, since the Death of the Family, they've pretty much just been doing horrible, horrible things to Nightwing nonstop. And that's when it started. His were pretty good and kind of heavy. Oh, there's other spoilers I could tell you, Jesse, but I'll hold off on that. I won't tell you anything about that. Have you heard anything about what they've done to Nightwing during the Forever Evil thing?
No, well, I've seen, like, pages where they're implying that they're doing terrible things to Nightwing. And, no, I haven't heard, actually, what's going on yet.
Slight spoiler, his fate is uncertain at this point. Is all you can really say. And Nightwing the series ended just recently.
Oh.
Yeah, so.
Okay.
Okay. Anything else on Death of the Family?
Not really. It was good. I enjoyed it.
It was interesting reading it. I read the hardcover in 2 sittings, so as opposed to, like I was saying earlier, waiting month to month. I think it kind of reads better that way. I mean, most comics do. But
sure.
It kind of reads. The ending feels less like a letdown when you read it like that, as opposed to at the time there was so much hype building up between each issue. It was inevitable that somebody's going to be disappointed. I guess we could throw our end on here though.
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. Well, does Melanie know about it?
No.
What?
Okay.
Oh, even better. Great.
This is Randy. Get to the Grawlix.
This is Melanie. UPKA Grawlix.
And this is Jesse. The Grawlix? You can't handle the Grawlix.
Thank you for listening to the Grawlix Podcast. The Grawlix Podcast is a production of Electronic Media Collective and Vorpal Arrow Studios. This podcast is released under a Creative Commons Attribution, Non-Commercial, No Derivatives 4.0 International License. To hear more, visit GrawlixPodcast.com, follow us on Facebook at Facebook.com/GrawlixPodcast, and like us on Twitter at Twitter.com/GrawlixPodcast.
Yeah, see, I love them. That's the type of stuff that cracks me up.